I wanted to talk about this book, Fabulous, The Rise of the Beautiful Eccentric by Madison Moore. And Madison Moore is a PhD, cultural critic, DJ, born in Ferguson, Missouri, and currently lives in Berlin and London. This book was published in 2018 by Yale University Press. This is not written in a standard academic way. It's not a standard ethnography. It has a really in-depth introductory chapter which overviews a lot of his main concepts, and then the following 4 or 5 chapters either focus on an interview with a particular beautiful eccentric person or are based on just a case study, basically. You know, this book is interesting to me both as a sociologist teaching sociology classes focused on the body and embodiment and at cultural intersecting with self-presentation. It's interesting for my work on tattooed professors, where I talk about how a new generation of academics might want to accentuate their different identities and demographic diversity in the academic institution, which is historically a very conservative place for self-presentation and very much built on the cis straight white male middle class kind of suit and tie tweed jacket persona. So first of all, Dr. Moore is talking about how some folks are just, born eccentric. This is their personality. They really want to be able to express themselves in a particular manner, which is basically, too flamboyant for our kind of conservative society. And so he's stating that being fabulous on this level in your everyday life is an act of resistance, and it's an act of bravery going up against possible cultural violence. And so he's really especially focusing on folks who are queer, people of color, marginalized people really living at the margins as social outcasts, and that rather than just staying in the position that society delegates to them and being quiet and not drawing attention to themselves, that some folks are going to accessorize their appearance and be fabulous, even at the risk of this kind of social cost. And so throughout this book, it's a really great opportunity to also just take note of these beautiful eccentric folks that he mentions, the folks on Instagram, folks on the internet who have wide followings, so that we can actually plug in and develop a community and follow some of these folks that are expressing themselves in a new manner. So on the first page, he defines the 4 basic traits of fabulousness. And they are, the first one, that fabulousness does not cost a lot of money. Number 2, it's an aesthetic that requires high level of creativity, imagination, and originality. 3, that fabulous is dangerous, political, confrontational, risky, and largely, but certainly not only, practiced by queer, trans, and trans feminine people of color and other marginalized groups. And finally, number 4, it's about making a spectacle of yourself, not merely to be seen, but because your body is constantly suppressed and undervalued. And so it's a choice, he states, between fabulousness and an embrace of yourself, when you're constantly reminded that you don't deserve to be embraced. You're constantly told by society, just sit back, don't draw attention to yourself, be quiet, dress just to kind of fit in and not rock the boat. And so then he defines the creativity as a way of taking something from one context and making it give meaning in another kind of fashion context. So taking everyday household objects and creating them into a piece of adornment that really kind of pokes fun at what is fashion, what is culture, what is art, and also just bringing that daily element into one's self-presentation and commentary. And of course, he's focusing a lot on drag, talking about, now we have RuPaul's Drag Race on television, and of course there have been like more subcultural movies in the past about these kinds of communities. ballrooms, drag culture, but now we have it in the prime time. So he quotes fashion historian Sean Cole, who has shown that genderfuck style is a style of drag that puts male and female clothing together in a way that actually confuses or watered down the way that gender is read from clothing. And so an important part of being fabulous is this transgressive approach to gender. What is maleness? What is femaleness? Playing with those and violating these kind of cultural norms and boundaries about what is appropriate for each gender. And he addresses the question, why not just fit in? Why not just be normal? And for some folks, just like for, probably the majority of people, it's more liberating to just dress normal, fit in, be like everyone else. But for other people, that is just such an oppressive force to just have to fit into this kind of preppy sports culture, mainstream society when you are a beautiful eccentric yourself and you want to be able to express yourself and who you are. And so it's understanding that you are in this kind of marginalized position, but your resistance, your active resistance is one of being a beautiful eccentric, of going ahead and taking that risk and daring society to to challenge you and to go out into this world. And one of the people state, at least, if I'm going to go out into this world and be bullied and taunted, that at least I can, be fabulous while this is happening to me. And so it's, Madison Moore stresses in the book repeatedly that this is an act of political resistance, just to be able to live your fabulous self in your daily life. He says, as a queer aesthetic category, fabulousness requires aesthetic labor and work, or what I have called to think of as work with an E. And so just the labor that goes into this. And he also brings up that, we live in a capitalist society, and that he states, while I may be disempowered by capitalism, I will empower myself through my ideas and my creativity. And so one of the ways just to be anti-capitalist, to fight against capitalism, is this way to do this work and this labor, not for producing profits for the capitalist owners, but to creating your own fabulous image that goes against these cultural norms. He also mentions the concept of self-couture, also meaning a couturing of the self, where the word also suggests exclusivity, insurance that we are seeing as unusual, one of a kind. And so kind of, basically working on your self-image, on your individuality, on really creating, your individuality in this kind of public statement manner. But just this constant question of, why not just fit in and not be abused? But it's because that the society does hate you and want to abuse you. But you go against that still. You have the power to go against that, or you don't, and you hide in your, khaki pants and sports, hat. He says if fabulous eccentrics played by the rules and fit in, then they wouldn't have to worry about being harassed or feeling unsafe on the sidewalks. At the end of the day, the question of fabulous asks all of us is, when can we have a world where it would be safe to just be me, where I don't have to be depressed because my body doesn't fit in with norms and ideas that never had me in mind in the first place? In one of the chapters, he does interview a Black female professor who talks about the context of living within academia, who has been told by more than once and by more than one institution to tone down her look, an unsubtle suggestion that blackness, whenever it appears, always presents a surplus, an excess that needs to be tamed. One of her professor friends says, "You look like you spend so much time and money on your outward appearance that you don't seem serious." And so while women are expected to dress in a very feminine way, perhaps in the corporate business world, in academia, it's supposed to be a world of the mind. And so bringing too much attention to one's body, especially in a feminine adornment kind of way, brings out that sexism that, you're more concerned about your your female appearance than, you know, the content of your mind. And so this is looked down upon in academia. But throughout the book, there's just this challenge, this constant tension between the pressure to fit in. If you just, you know, take it easy and dress, you know, preppy like everyone else, dress properly, boringly, that, you know, you do have to have a job and you have to feed your family. And so you don't want to, you know, rock the boat constantly, but you're also just constantly betraying yourself and how you feel about yourself, who you really feel that you are, and you're hiding that for your paycheck, for these people that you're socializing with. Also, it's important that this book does focus on you know, people of color, on trans folks, on people, you know, like if you're white and queer, you know, you can still have a lot of privilege to pull on, so that perhaps being eccentric is the only point of oppression or societal friction that you receive. But for people of color, I mean, you know, they've dealt with so many different layers of oppression within the community, within the dominant culture, and then, you know, to express yourself in your beautifully eccentric way, and to get that kind of static from coming from within your own community, you know, the Black community, and then have to also deal with the racism of, you know, the mainstream society, of the workplace. It's just a different level, and how your appearance is tied to your racial identity, and to the ways in which racism is subtly kind of spoken about and targeted to certain people is really important part of the book as well. So, you know, I think that for students in my class especially, you know, you can go through this book, especially this introductory chapter where he's really laying out these kinds of theoretical concepts about fabulousness as an act of political resistance. And, you know, finding his examples that are included in this book, you can find your own. Who are some of the people who are, you know, fabulous and beautiful eccentrics on the internet that really inspire you and give you hope that you can kind of live your life in a way that is really meaningful to yourself and to your own sense of identity and purpose in this world, and not just submitting to the demands of the workplace or your family or the community in which you live. So thanks for joining me, and I hope that you check out this book and let me know what you think of it. Ow.